Welcome back to Occupy Radio. We got Joe and Getch here, and we are talking with Dan Marks, who is the president of ArticleV.org, which is the legal expression of the Inter-Occupy Article 5 group, dealing with the Article 5 of the Constitution. And he is the guy to talk to right now about the Compact for America, where it sounds like there might be almost a constitutional hijacking. Is that the way you'd put it, Dan?
I can't really describe it any other way. First of all, let me say thanks for having me on here. It's a pleasure to talk to you folks about this issue, and it's great that you guys can get this message out to so many people in Occupy, because it's definitely one of those issues that's flying under the radar right now.
Yeah.
A lot of these constitutional issues are very niche issues, and the mainstream media really ignores a lot of this stuff. Surprising how many people still haven't heard about Citizens United and stuff like that too yet. Let's see, the Compact for America is definitely looking to put the Constitution in a headlock. They figured out what we've been working on. They were also working on it at the same time. They have a lot of experience with this. There's two ways to amend the Constitution. You can either go through Congress, which they've done every single time, or you can call a convention with delegates from all of the different states, and they can propose amendments to the Constitution. And if it's supported by 2/3 or 66% of the delegation, which actually comes to 34 states, then it is sent on to Congress. Usually they have to enact an amendment with a 2/3 majority, but when it comes from a convention, they just agree by simple majority, and then it gets sent out to the states for ratification. If there's 38 states that agree to any amendment proposal from Congress or from the convention, then it becomes a part of our Constitution. So the Compact for America has kind of worked the entire process backwards. We haven't quite seen it like this before. This is a whole new animal. In fact, I think it really stretches the definition of Article 5 convention because of the way they've it's kind of ironic because they're actually doing this by means of collective bargaining the power of states against the federal government. And what they're doing is they're approaching Congress with the request to call a convention, which requires 2/3 of the states, or 34 states, but they're doing it with 38 states. And they're going to do it in a way that says, we not only have enough states to call this convention for the first time in our history, but we're going to pre-ratify this amendment, trying to give Congress basically no choice but to pass this balanced budget amendments that they've revised for their own agenda, basically. So it's an amazing union, I guess, of the state for them to bargain together like this.
Dan, it sounds to me like the crux of this is in the balanced budget amendment. Can you talk a bit about that?
Okay. The biggest objection I have personally with the balanced budget amendment is that in the event that Congress doesn't agree to a balanced budget, and keep in mind we haven't had a balanced budget agreed to for the last 3 or 4 years. In fact, we haven't even had a budget for the last 3 or 4 years. In that event, then this amendment would transfer that authority over to the White House, and the president then gets to cherry pick and slash the entire federal budget for that year as he or she sees fit. So now you can imagine the situation here with a two-party system. Whoever has control of the White House has no incentive to negotiate in good faith to arrive at a balanced budget to submit for his approval. They can basically pigeonhole the entire process and never agree to a budget, and then they know that the complete authority goes over to the president, which then does go back to the Congress for a rubber stamp. But at that point, it just becomes part of the process to turn over the nation's checkbook to the president, and that's basically every social safety net is on the line here indirectly. It's astonishing that they would hand over that kind of authority to the president.
Yeah, I guess if they've created this thing now, of course it would go to the Supreme Court to be argued as to whether procedure was constitutional. But as the Supreme Court is constituted right now, it probably would, although Obama did make 2 appointments. So the question is whether the Republicans could carry it in the Supreme Court. Any thoughts
Well,
there?
the truth is that Congress is in complete control of it. The Supreme Court won't get involved with the calling of the convention. That's completely up to Congress. They consider that to be a political question, not a legal question. You have to consider that there's going to be somebody in Congress. It only takes one member of Congress in either house to actually propose that they call a convention. It's never been done before. And it's basically a peremptory call. They're forced to do that once the state threshold has been crossed. They don't really have any choice to even refer it to committee or debate it. They just have to acknowledge that 2/3 of the states have applied for it, and then they're forced to call it. So, and that's actually in part what we're doing in our group with Occupy. It was very difficult when we first got together. We were trying to decide, this is something we want. Where are we starting from? Have there ever been any states that have ever applied for this before? And we were very surprised to find out that it looked like basically every state has applied for this at some point in our long history. They do it over and over. There's hundreds and hundreds of these things. But I also learned from talking with the author of the Article 5 process report issued from the Congressional Research Service this last summer that the Congress in the 1970s decided there was a whole bunch of applications during the 60s and 70s, like hundreds, a couple hundred. Somebody in Congress decided, wow, maybe we should have a process to start counting these things. And the truth is that they talked about doing this. They proposed 22 times to establish a process to start counting applications from states, but they rejected it. The truth is that they've never counted them. To me, if you understand what this convention is, it's the right that's expressed in our Declaration of Independence. It's the point where the people have the right and opportunity to alter or to abolish our government. And it was reserved for us there in that convention clause. It's a fantastic thing. We definitely wanted to use it. And we just had to figure out where we're starting from.
Exactly. That's one of the things I've been wondering about in this whole thing, and you've explained it to me before. There's a lot of people lately who have been saying, our government is off the rails, and the only way to fix it now is through calling a constitutional convention. So here we have a constitutional convention being called. All the right people, it would seem, would be very happy to have that opportunity to come in and start just giving whole bucket loads of new amendments. Why is this particular instance a bad thing when it could end up being such a good thing?
The thing is like I was saying with the Declaration of Independence, it reserves this power to the people. This is the People's Convention. What they're doing in the compact is they are, in advance, taking the opportunity for us to select our delegates, and they are saying that each state will send their governor. Well, why are they doing that? Well, they know what the numbers are. If it were actually people throughout Michigan going to a convention, you're going to get a much different vote, probably, than you would from Rick Snyder. Same with Wisconsin. In fact, because in the convention, each state equals one vote, it's much better to send many, many people. You can send 300 people to a convention, and still it's just one vote. So you can bring all of those different experiences and stuff. What they're doing is they're basically sending one of the elites to a convention that's reserved for the people. This is our tool.
What they're doing is they're trying to magnify the impact of small states. I mean, small states are already disproportionately represented because they each have 2 senators. But now if what you do is you reduce it to 1 vote per state, then the small states, of which many of them are red, gets a disproportionately higher representation.
Absolutely. It's another way to put your finger on the scale. They've already got 31 state governors on the GOP side.
How is it
34 to pass anything?
How is it coming into it that even though they have these bulletproof numbers, how is it that they get to determine who is sent in and who has a voice? I don't understand that. I mean, isn't there already a system that has been devised?
Yes, they are doing the end around on that system. That there is an established state process of elections, and you got to understand, each state has their own unique process of selecting delegates. That's why the number is ambiguous. How they're going to do it sometimes is not specifically answered. Sometimes it is. But in this case, they're getting the state legislatures and the governors to agree to a new process in advance. So this is actually rigging it at the state level
Is there some place we can go to read this compact?
Yeah, actually, if you want to, compactforamerica.org.
Okay.
And there's plenty of opportunities for you to read the compact there. It's a PDF loaded up on their website. These guys play to win. This is a masterpiece of political and legal mumbo-jumbo to a point where it exercised any democratic process from this method. That is the most abhorrent thing to me. We haven't had one for 240 nearly years now.
Mm-hmm.
And potentially the first time this is going to be used, they're not going to be able to even change the language of the amendment in the convention. It's just going to be a speech of governors, one after another. If you can imagine, Scott Walker, Rick Scott, Nikki Haley, John Kasich, just one after another telling everybody they've got to get our fiscal house in order, and they're doing this for our own good. And
now, are they doing this for our own good, though? You'd have to admit that our government is bloated. There's a lot of money going into things that we'd be best off not having it go into. Could you maybe spell out what is this going to cause to happen? What is the landscape of America after this happens?
It gives this president so much power. It's a fundamental change in the way we run our government. And the big sin here, the big illness that they're trying to cure, is an annual federal budget. It's not the debt. It's just the annual federal budget, and it must be balanced. It's not an incredible illness. It's not the worst thing. It's not the one reason you transform your entire government. It's an astonishing amount of power to be handed over.
It's an excuse in the sense that the same forces that are doing this have been trying to wipe out Social Security since it showed up during FDR's administration. They've been trying to do a variety of things and, haven't been successful. So this sounds like their latest ploy on kind of circumventing the process.
Well, exactly. Why do they get rid of collective bargaining in Wisconsin for the budget? Was that the worst possible? Was it that out of whack? No, it really wasn't. But it was just an excuse to hack away at our liberties and our rights and the powers that we have as normal people. It's an end around. The compact is very transparent in that fact that is what they're doing. The balanced budget amendment itself is also undemocratic to take that power away from Congress. Amazing. It's just amazing. There's a process to these things, and that really changes America.
I remember right about the time that Obama took office, there was some talk about the budget being $1 trillion out of balance. And I know that he's reduced that margin a bit. Do you know how much right now, where we stand right now, out of balance, and how much our social services and armed forces will take a hit if this passes?
I found that we were running about $1.4 trillion a year during Obama's first three budgets.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
Anyway, get back to the Article 5 issues. One of the problems that we're seeing in the media is a rush to condemn the convention as a dangerous tool that is going to destroy the Constitution. Absolutely not. There's been hundreds of state conventions, state constitutional conventions in our country's history. The original Constitutional Convention was fantastic. Every single one of the conventions that we've had in our country's history at the state and federal level has gone great. What the problem is here is that they've rigged the entire system to their advantage. This is not really an Article 5 convention. It's inspired by an Article 5 convention, but they have hijacked it before it even is assembled. It's basically the worst fears that we have as a progressive of the Article 5 convention basically being guaranteed that that's what's going to happen. So this is a perverted sense of what it is. And the mainstream media right now is basically bashing the tool that we have to alter or abolish our Constitution. If they understood what the truth of the matter is, that might be a positive outcome of this entire story, is that people come to realize that they do have this power. The Constitution starts as a piece of paper. We get to define what kind of country we are. We outlawed alcohol. We can outlaw oil. There's a whole lot we can do to modernize our country and kind of redefine who we're going to be for the next 100 years.
You're thinking, Dan, that maybe there could be good coming out of this as starting a trend where citizens will then say, hey, look at that. Look what just happened. Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can abolish Citizens United and corporate personhood and all kinds of other things like the Electoral College. Maybe those things will come down the road after this happens. But you had also mentioned when we were talking about this a few weeks back that this also presents leverage so that the convention never has to be called because Congress may choose to not open that door and just bargain with the 38 governors and say, okay, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, maybe we'll give you the balanced budget amendment. You want to expand on that a little?
Yeah. Let me start with the history of why I said that. Woodrow Wilson, actually 100 years ago, started a campaign for what became the 17th Amendment. And he actually went around from state to state with basically the identical application telling Congress that they wanted to directly elect their senators. Believe it or not, people don't really realize this a lot of times, but it used to be set up that our state legislatures would elect senators, not the people. Well, around the 1900s, they had enough of that. So he went around state to state and had a campaign for this application for an Article 5 convention for the specific purpose of passing this amendment. When he brought all the applications to Congress and counted them up, had enough, only took 31 states at the time. I believe there were 38 that actually applied for it. Instead of calling a convention, Congress decided they're going to pass this thing and avoid the convention altogether. If they're presented with the same situation with this 38 states saying that they're going to ratify this thing, they have more than enough. But they may decide, and they may really want to, but I've been looking at these numbers lately, and I'm starting to wonder that even if the desire to avoid this convention is tremendous, you're still going to have to get 2/3 of the Senate to agree to this balanced budget amendment. And I don't think you're going to pull 66 votes out of the Senate on this amendment. So as broken as Congress is, I don't think they're going to be able to save their own necks. And I think they're going to be forced to call a convention. This group, Goldwater, they're working in concert. I don't know to what degree, but I do know that they're working together with ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, to get this done. And as the Spring Summit on May 2nd and 3rd in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they have a chance to get all these governors together face-to-face for many conversations that won't be recorded or written down. That would be 2 months before this thing is scheduled.
I mean, what does the Chinese curse say? May you live in interesting times. And we most certainly do. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of people making big paychecks, sort of planning for the future corporate kleptocracy and moving us to that point.
We got into the Article 5 issue within Occupy. Honestly, I've seen Occupy in many ways as a defensive effort. Article 5 was a way for us to go on offense. And now seeing this coming down the pipe, it's like we're back on defense.
You weren't the first ones to think of it.
No, not by a long shot. I mean, there's literally 200 years of effort to make this thing happen. Hundreds and hundreds of applications. These go back to the abolition of slavery, and they all add together. The subject doesn't have to be the same. So we are ready to do this. We've been very critical of the applications that we have, and our group has come up with a list of 42 states that have standing legal applications that are up on our website, articlev.org. They're there for review. It only takes 34. We've got 42. If anybody can tell us that that's not a legal application, please do it. But until they do, it sure looks like we're ready to do this, and it's just a matter of Congress avoiding the call, like a debtor that's afraid to answer the phone because it might be a bill collector. It's ridiculous how many of these applications have come in.
Well, that was an interesting metaphor given the conversation.
really, we're still due from the convention from 100 years ago.
All right.
We were forced to call it. They don't have the choice not to call it. Like I said, it's a peremptory call.
We're going to want to get you, Dan, back on the show with us as you get closer and we start to understand the magnitude and the inevitability of this. But I want to give you one last shot to impart any words of wisdom before we say goodbye.
Oh, geez, where can I start? Well, first of all, I'd like to encourage everybody to visit our site, articlev.org. There's plenty of information out there. And thanks to you, Gretch and Joe, for having me on and letting me talk to everybody, help me get the word out. This is something that everybody can do to get the word out about. This is our Paul Revere moment. They are coming, and we've got to make sure that the message is clear that they're stealing our convention, our chance to amend the Constitution. And I think once people realize that the Constitution really does belong to us and we can amend it, I think that the people are really going to have a desire to do this and come together, and hopefully we'll eliminate decades of wedge issues with a chance of the people coming together too. So thanks for having me on once again.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Here the heart will melt. Here